This is a video on planes in Victory at Sea Pacific, specifically how not to die to them. We're going to start by looking at anti-aircraft guns. What they are, what varieties they are, and which ships use them best. Because that is the easy question, which ones do I build to not die to air cancer? If you read the stat card and stopped at that, you might think there's only two types of AA, local AA and AA strength. The one that's not shown on the stat card is actually the most important, and it is dual purpose gun AA. And this is the secret stat that's the most strong determiner between what is and isn't a great AA ship. Here we have two sets of destroyers, and one of these sets is secretly much better than the others. The destroyer leaders class available to the US has 8 guns, but if you look down at the bottom, you see there's no plane icon here. That's because they're not dual purpose guns, which are guns of about 4 or 5 inch caliber that are capable of being used for shooting at planes as well. And every destroyer that the US has that isn't a Clemson or the destroyer leader is equipped with the dual purpose version of the 5-inch gun, which when set to AA mode, either automatically when the ships are attacked or manually by clicking them so that there is a target circle upon them, are extremely effective at bringing down planes. So here I have a demonstration. The dual purpose guns have significantly longer range than any other type of AA gun. You can tell that your ships are using theirs because they will fire. Don't worry if the turrets don't turn, and note that AA is flowing, even if the bag does not inflate. Through using dual-purpose guns, even a set of a handful of destroyers can attempt reasonably well to defend themselves against a carrier's attack. Remember to remove corpses from any squadron, because they will contribute to slowing glitches. Very few maneuvers can effectively throw off a dive bomber, but being fast is just about the only thing that can help. Here I am bringing several planes very close to an Omaha, which only has medium AA, listed on the stat card as just AA. You can see it's firing. It will fire at its listed 1 kilometer range with an intensity of 1. Between the two of them, they are slowly doing damage to the planes around them. So it'll be relatively easy to knock out anything that's relying exclusively on relatively small amounts of mid-range AA. All AA types are much better at deterring torpedo bombers than any other type. Against dive bombers, especially once grouped up, local AA and short range medium AA are almost completely useless. Here's just 5 flights grouped up, diving from well above its AA range, and it will spend maybe 2 or 3 seconds at most firing at them, because it doesn't have any dual purpose AA and it does not have a very impressive range on its medium AA. The 0.5 kilometer range on local AA makes it almost completely useless at defending your ship against planes, even when you have double-digit amounts of it. AA and planes interact very differently on the map. While it's very easy to see what's going on in combat view, on the map, the plane's AA damage calculation is run very simply and very brutally. The planes will attempt to attack the highest priority ship in the first squadron, and they will deal a fraction of their maximum damage. But they will always deal that fraction unless they're completely over. This means that if you have a battleship and you're dealing with a couple of planes, your task force can tank it without issue. Where if you don't actually have very good AA, doing that in combat view is much more likely to result in taking a very high amount of damage while still shooting down 0 planes. You are unlikely to kill or stop any air attack while in map view, because planes taking AA damage from the map take it slowly spread out across the whole squadron, and will usually be flying back to their carrier or base before they get shot down. And a plane's flight can repair as long as it's not completely shot down. So it's almost impossible to deplane a strike force from the map. So knowing how AA works, what ships should you use? And the answer is not going to be presented on the stat card too much, because as we just saw, dual-purpose guns are king when it comes to defending your fleet from airplanes. And that's not listed on the stat card. You can guess and learn, but here's a list of the best. For US destroyers, use the Gridley class until you unlock the Fletcher, and then consider using the Fletcher. The Gridley's speed will make it more effective at running down and moving around to screen ships, but the Fletcher does have one more gun. It's important to note, however, that the bonus gun it gets is midships and does not have front and rear coverage. That does have an effect on your ability to defend yourself, especially because running away is usually the best way to bring down more planes and lose fewer ships when you aren't able to push into the force that's throwing planes at you. The cheapest, most cost-effective anti-air cruiser available to the US is the Atlanta. You don't even need to upgrade it because most of its AA effectiveness is all its dual-purpose guns. If you do build it, you can get 3 mid-range AA, which is it'll help, but not by much. In the case of most ships, a 5-kilometer range on mid-range AA is very standard, which is going to be good, but it's nowhere near as good as your dual-purpose guns can be. The US has a couple of very similar cruisers in a similar price point that unlock over time. The Brooklyn, the St. Louis, and then the Cleveland. And the best of these is either the St. Louis or the Cleveland. The Brooklyn is worse because it is a bit slower than the St. Louis, and its AA, when you upgrade it, is a bit worse. They use the same dual-purpose gun configuration, but Brooklyn only has 5 for 5 kilometers, where St. Louis gets 6 for 6 kilometers. A bit better, and you'll only notice the difference if you're looking really hard. The Cleveland does beat them out at upgraded to 5 for 5 because it has one more set of dual-purpose guns. It actually has 12. The stat card lists them wrong because of a bug in the model on launch. And the biggest part of that is the bonus 2 twin turrets you get have a rear arc and a front arc, which means that you'll get much more out of your dual-purpose gun AA. The king of US cruisers is easily the Baltimore. It is only 20 war bonds more than most of the other cruisers you'll consider buying. It's a 9-gun heavy cruiser. It has the 4 per side. It has good dual-purpose guns, and it has battleships level of mid-range AA at 5-kilometer range. Again, the dual-purpose guns are going to be the rock stars, but this is going to be very noticeable over previous cruisers when you're getting attacked by dive bombers. It'll help you beat the trickle if the AI has decided not to group up their planes. Most US battleships are well off in the AA department. Despite having a listed 20-ish 5-inch guns, they and pretty much all battleships only get 4 dual-purpose guns per side. So the specific AA stats should not be a deal breaker when you're picking amongst your early game US battleships. In-game, the South Dakota class battleships are not really an improvement over the North Carolina, and one of the most glaring points where this is demonstrated is in AA. The North Carolinas get 12 mid-range AA at 5-kilometer range, where the South Dakotas only get 5 for some reason. All 3 of them have 10 dual-purpose guns per side, unlike the previous ones, which are all artificially limited to having 2 sets of turrets, 1 pair of turrets on each side, capable of firing in dual-purpose mode. This was applied to all of them, including ones where the 5-inch guns are clearly in single mounts or casements. Once you unlock it, the Iowa is your best battleship. It's faster, it has 12 Mid-range AA at 5, it has 10 dual-purpose guns per side, so it can definitely look after itself, in addition to being able to tank planes that get through reasonably well. You will still want to escort it with the ships mentioned earlier. The Japanese Navy has a lot fewer good anti-aircraft options. Almost all the ships available have no mid-range AA. The only exception off the top of my head is the Agano-class light cruiser, with only one. A measly one, yes. It has a 6-kilometer range so you can use them if you're hype about mid-range AA, but that's not going to protect you. What is going to protect you are a couple options you unlock in your swarm of destroyer varieties. In your traditional destroyer varieties, you get Shiratsuyus, which have dual-purpose guns, and Kagaros, which get dual-purpose guns. Also, the Matsu-class mini-destroyer. The Kagaros are 15 war bonds more expensive, and pretty worth it, because they move faster, have more guns, and are generally better. While neither of these will be available to build at the start of the campaign, the build-up from before the campaign means you do have a dozen or so of these destroyers with dual-purpose guns. Matsu-class destroyers also have dual-purpose guns, which surprised me at first, as they appeared otherwise insignificant and poor options. But this is a way to get much cheaper and available dual-purpose guns into your fleet, and there is very little trade-off in their reduced speed if you're going to be operating slow carriers or battleships. You'll also unlock the Akizuki and varieties of it, which have very good dual-purpose guns. Despite being only 3.9-inch guns, they are quite good. I'd say, from testing, better than the 5-inch guns previously available. One of them has 6 guns, otherwise just take the Hanazuki because it has 35 knots of speed. It's not much of a difference, but it will help. Most of the old type cruisers are barely worth building, and in the AA department there is no justification for them. They're all no dual purpose guns, no mid-range AA, one local AA, so they might shoot down 5 planes in their lifetime if they're on the front lines magically surviving the whole war. Again, there's the Agano class, which is your only mid-range AA option, but if you're looking to build a cruiser anyway, and because you want to protect something, you're just going to want to jump to your various heavy cruiser classes, all of which have 4.7 or 5-inch guns on their sides that are dual purpose guns. They are side arc only, but they are okay, they're good. I was going to say pretty good, but that'd be a lie. So they are on their own fairly potent. One that stood out as actually a decent contender is the Chitose class seaplane tender. It comes with a bunch of spotters, and these 5-inch guns are dual purpose with a front arc of fire. They're a decent option to consider when looking to give yourself a lot more spotting, a slightly bigger ship to defend you from planes. The carriers have unimpressive AA. They do have access to dual purpose guns in limited quantities, but what you're primarily going to be using is your very good fighter planes right off the bat. And the only one that stands out as uniquely better than the others is the Shinano class, because it has 144 damage stat. This is not damage it does, it's damage it takes to kill, like hit points, but labeled differently for some reason. And this is like battleship hit points. It's not quite battleship armor, but these are very capable of operating alone where you expect them to get attacked. Especially on map view, they'll be able to take chip damage for a couple months on station while operating on their own or with any of your Kaga class that are still alive at the time. The Yamato is slightly better than the other battleships in the AA department. Your battleships are generally bad in the AA department. What they get access to is high values in local AA But as you saw in the demonstrations, range is really important for letting your damage output actually kill the planes, because they don't come the last few hundred meters, and some will even drop just barely within local AA range. So these numbers aren't going to protect you very well, unless they have to fly past several things with a high number. And because you need a battleship before you get to about 7 or something like that, they aren't going to ever. All of them do have 4 dual-purpose 5 guns with about the same range on each side. The Yamato has 6 5-inch guns per side, and they do have the full 9 nautical mile range that you see on basically every 5-inch dual-purpose gun from the US side, while all the other battleships are forced to use a very reduced 5 nautical mile range. It's important to keep in mind that the formations that the AI sets are very loose. The Yamato does not get to use its 6.1-inch guns off the Mogami as dual-purpose guns, though historically they were built to elevate past 45 degrees, which, according to a dictionary, is dual-purpose, but I would not bet money they were highly effective in any case. The British are significantly worse off than any other in terms of fighters, with the Hawker Hurricane, which takes a while to unlock, is short range and only manages a dogfight strength of 2. In context, the Wildcat that the US uses at the start of its campaign and struggles with has a dogfight strength of 2 and the tough attribute. You'll start with a fighter, the Ferry Fulmar, which has 0 dogfight strength, meaning it doesn't shoot things down. And because of that, you'll need to do almost all or all of your plane killing with your ships in combat view. And to that end, you'll need the V-class. They're ancient, but they're also the only destroyer you have with a dual-purpose gun. The 4.7-inch guns don't have the ability to elevate sufficiently, so they're not dual-purpose. A little secret is that some amount of T-magic has made the low-caliber dual-purpose guns that the British use magically longer range. These are 4-inch guns with an 11 nautical mile range as dual-purpose ones, whereas if we jump over to some of their 4.7-inch guns, they have an 8 NMI range. The American 5-inch gun is 9 nautical miles. The Japanese guns are about the same when they're not used as secondaries for their older battleships. So with that, the V-class is actually fairly effective, though you don't have any alternative destroyer to compare it to. None of your little ships have dual-purpose guns, and no amount of ships with 1 local AA are going to be able to protect you from dive bombers or torpedo bombers. In the cruiser slot, you have Leanders, which have 4 4-inch guns. These are dual-purpose. They do have the 11 NMI range, so they're all right. You do get a bit of mid-range AA and local AA, but those are not going to help you very much. You'll be relying on your dual-purpose guns. Add to the list of reasons not to use the Cylon class that they have worse AA because the Fijis gain a bit of mid-range AA at 5-kilometer range, and they don't. They also gain 1 less local AA, and they use the same amount of 4-inch dual-purpose secondaries to keep them safe. You may have noticed I skipped over one, and that is the Dido class. These look like mini Atlantas with fewer guns, 1 less down the center line. Even once you get their optimal form, the second group has 10 5.25-inch guns, and at a glance they look just like slightly smaller Atlantas without the wing turrets, with 1 fewer down the center line in the rear. But they can put in very solid performances because the Atlanta uses 5-inch guns with 9 nautical miles range, where these 5.25-inch guns have a 12 NMI range. And this is pretty intense. This is 1 less than the standard 6-inch gun range. And this means that you'll have 3 more nautical miles of AA coverage in which to bring down those planes, which more than makes up for the slightly fewer turrets available. The only battleship you currently have available comes with plenty of fly swatters, a set of 16 5.25-inch guns for dual purpose, and a respectable 5 mid-range AA plus 12 local AA exclusively to show up the Japanese battleships. Most of your carriers come with a large quantity of 4.5-inch dual-purpose guns with a very intense 11 nautical mile range. These are quite good for self-defense among carriers, and I would rate them at or above the USCVs. They aren't better enough to overcome that the USCVs get to equip actually good fighters, but they are quite intense self-defense weapons.